Hello, welcome to another episode of Phil the Screams podcast. Today we will be talking about Halloween Kills. This movie takes place directly after Halloween 2018. 2018 was so successful that the label immediately greenlit 2 more sequels to make this a trilogy. Now it's kind of funny, the first time I watched Halloween 2018, I was a little iffy on it, but on the rewatch, I was like, you know what, it's a pretty decent Halloween movie. It's a pretty good time, it's fun, shot really well. It has all the things that you could really ask to be in a Halloween movie. And with this movie, the very first time I saw Halloween Kills, again, I was iffy on 2018 at the time, but when I watched Halloween Kills, it kind of brought me back to the trilogy. Like, I was really excited, I thought it was fun, it was bloody, gory, and I was just super hyped on it. But on the rewatch of this, I noticed a lot of its flaws that brings this movie a lot of flack. Let's just go ahead and dive right into this film. So to start it off, I really like how it takes place immediately after 2018. The end of 2018, they're driving away on the back of that truck. And this movie, you know, we find Laurie, we find Karen and Allison. They're all on that truck, they're driving away, they feel like they're safe. And then the fire trucks drive by the truck to go to Laurie's house, which is burning down. And Laurie's like, no, let it burn! Which it's funny because later in the movie, like, these 3 different characters, they kind of learn that Michael's back at 3 different times. And each time, like, they all act shocked, like it's gonna happen. But at this precise moment, as the fire trucks are going by, like, Laurie's screaming, no. And you would think she would have an idea, like, yeah, Michael's probably going to be back. I mean, maybe she was just so bent on killing Michael, she just wanted that house and Michael to burn to its very ashes, and that's why she was mad. It's a nice little moment, though. I mean, I said before 2018, I felt like Laurie took the Loomis role, because there was no Loomis. And if Loomis was in this film, I could definitely see him, if he's driving away in a truck and fire trucks are going, you know, Loomis would definitely be going, no, let it burn, let Michael burn all the way down. So it's a nice kind of callback to the character that Laurie is. Speaking of Dr. Loomis, we do get a nice, cool little flashback scene. The flashback kind of revolves Hawkins. I know last episode I said Brackett. It's Hawkins in 2018 that we were mostly following around. Jeez. But we get a nice little flashback of Hawkins and his partner going into the house at the end of Halloween. Like, it kind of shows what Hawkins went through. Like, Michael takes his partner, Hawkins shoots his gun, and when he shoots his gun, he accidentally kills his partner, shoots him right in the neck. And Michael does a cool little thing to it. As soon as his partner's shot in the neck, Michael just kind of drops him, turns his entire body, and goes down the stairs. Great body acting. But we see kind of the inspiration that kind of drives Hawkins. You know, he's kind of haunted by that one night. It's why he was so hell-bent on catching Michael in 2018, even though he failed. But then we get Dr. Loomis himself, which, it's not a deep fake. This was actually like, this was just a worker on set, and I guess all the people were like, man, he looks like Dr. Loomis, like we should try to do something with that. And they brought him in and they had another guy do the voice, but it looks uncanny. Like, it looks just like Dr. Loomis. And the first time I was watching it, I got super excited. I was like, what? Like, oh, I hope we get more Dr. Loomis. We don't. But it was just a cool little scene for them to do. One of the highlights of this movie that I would say is when the firefighters do arrive at Laurie's house burning down. Michael rises up. He was hiding in the gun safe, Laurie's gun safe. And some of the firefighters are in the burning building. Michael comes out, kills them. And then we get the cool shot of all the firefighters outside trying to put out the fire. And Michael just emerges from the house. Like, it's kind of rising from the ashes, if you will. Really cool scene. He slaughters all the firefighters, and man, like, you don't really see a scene like this in a Halloween movie. And as soon as this scene happened, like, I was on board. I was like, let's go. Michael's taking out everyone. This scene just kind of delivers on the title's name, Halloween Kills. You know, we got firefighters with hoses, axes, you name it. And Michael's just taking them out one by one, blood splattering on the camera. This scene's just great. We also get what I would consider the scariest kills of the movie, and that is Sandra and Phil. They're just kind of an old couple living in their home. They're not really aware of what's going on, and Michael ends up breaking into their home. He attacks Phil. Sandra literally goes to the door. She had the perfect chance to run away, but then as soon as Michael Myers steps in the house, she grabs a knife like she's gonna fight him off, oh, for Phil. But then as soon as Michael takes a couple steps, she's like, oh no. And Michael overpowers her. He takes a fluorescent light bulb and just stabs her, and she starts bleeding out. But the most eeriest part of these kills is as she's bleeding out, you kind of get her perspective. And Michael's literally just stabbing Phil over and over with a bunch of different knives that's set up. They got one of those knife holders that has 10 different knives in it. And Michael's literally just taking his time, taking one knife out, stabbing it in Phil's back, taking another knife out. And he's literally setting up Phil, he's decorating their room with the kill. And you're just kind of in Sandra's place watching this all happen, watching her husband die. And it's pretty eerie because I think we all know a Sandra and Phil in our life, whether it be our grandma and grandpa or maybe our older aunt or uncle. They just seem like that friendly old couple. They might bicker, but they seem like genuinely nice people. And just to see their house get invaded, it's man, I kind of wish they would have made it, but we're watching a Halloween movie, so I guess this has to happen. And that's just one of the things this film does well, along with 2018, is the different townspeople of Haddonfield. They're minor characters that you run into, but they do a good enough job of fleshing them out that you care about them a little bit. You kind of like their characters, and even though they're not Laurie, they're not Allison, they're not Karen, you still like them. And there's a lot of ties that so there's a nurse and doctor, a husband and wife, they're dressed up as a nurse and doctor. You see them for 2 seconds in Halloween 18, but again, they return in Halloween Kills, and it's kind of oh yeah, if you watched Halloween 18 a lot, you're oh cool, we get to see what they're doing now. So David Gordon Green, he does a good job of just bringing his characters along. You see what they're doing in this movie. And that doctor and nurse, they're going to be traveling around in a group. That's going on at this bar. And this bar, I'm kind of jumping the gun here. Well, let me just talk about this bar scene. So there's a talent show going on at this bar where people are going up, they're singing. Some of them are probably telling jokes and stuff. Everyone's having a good time. They're clapping, they're laughing. And then Tommy Doyle walks up, and he's like, I'm going to tell you guys a story. And then he starts, talking about the murders that Michael Myers committed so many years ago. And he's like, this one's to my babysitter, Laurie. And he's, having a toast, and, everyone gets all serious. And just part of me, I'm like, man, what a Debbie Downer. Here we are, everyone's having a good time. People are singing, people are rocking out, people are laughing at jokes. And then this guy, comes up and just starts talking about murders that happened so many years ago. Man, how bleak. Eventually, they learn that Michael Myers is on the prowl again. Stuff's going on in Haddonfield. They get a general sense that Michael Myers is out. I think it was news coverage. And during that news coverage, they also say, oh, and also a few other patients have escaped. So, they get all fired up. Tommy Doyle's we got to go out and get him. And, while he's giving, his little fire-up speech, there's a little, tip jar which he puts in. He grabs, this bat from the bar. I think it's called, Old Huckleberry. And he's like, yeah, Michael's going to get a piece of Old Huckleberry. And in that tip jar, it says, love lives today or something like that. And then this is where the phrase evil dies tonight kind of spins off of that. I think there's one lady in the background. She's like, evil dies tonight. And on this phrase is said so much through this movie. It almost makes you nauseous. It reminds me of South Park where they're they took our jobs. This is that version of that where they just keep repeating, like, evil dies tonight. Like, everyone loves that phrase in Haddonfield for some reason. But yeah, they go out and they decide to start hunting Michael. Now, since I'm talking about the kills of this movie, there's a group, as they're going out patrolling the streets, Tommy's walking around with his baseball bat. I almost wish he talked in baseball puns while he walked around with the bat. Kind of just, he would just look around and go like, batters up. I mean, like, this movie's corny enough, like, as it is. This is literally like the perfect representation of like just a cheesy 80s slasher. So you got to kind of laugh with it a little bit. So I kind of wish that he talked in baseball puns, but I guess his character's kind of cringy enough. He gets enough flack. Doing that probably would have pushed it overboard. So there's a group of 4 that go out patrolling. We got Marcus and Vanessa, which that's our doctor and nurse. The couple dressed up as a doctor and nurse. Then we got nurse Marion Chambers, and then we have Lindsay. They're kind of driving around in the car. They find a group of kids, and those group of kids, like, they just don't care at all. They're like making fun of Michael Myers. They're like, I think the dude's a pervert. And it's kind of a funny moment until you find out that Michael killed one of the kids. He walks up with like a bloody mask, which the masks are a nice throwback to Season of the Witch, which is kind of cool. There's the Easter eggs in these movies, and that's one of them. But while these 4 are in the car, again, they do a nice throwback with Marion. Michael kind of reaches through the car window and like grabs her head again. And she takes the gun, and probably in like one of the most cringiest moments, she looks up and she's like, "This is for Dr. Loomis." And then like the gun's like empty, or like it just misfires, and she's like, "Whoa!" And like Michael takes care of him. And another cool kill. It's kind of funny, but like the girl dressed up as a nurse, she walks up and she's like trying to fire at Michael Myers, and she's getting closer, and Michael Myers just kicks the door and she shoots her own face. It's kind of a shocking moment, but it's fun. And the word fun is a good way to sum up the beginning of this film. All these moments I just talked about, it's they're cheesy. There's a lot of cheese in it. But it's a pretty fun beginning of the film. And then we get to the middle section of the film, and this is where like this film starts to go downhill, unfortunately. And that's when they're all in the hospital. Halloween movies, like they do a funny thing to where whenever they make an original story, usually the follow-up, the main character is in a hospital. We have Halloween 1, Halloween 2, Laurie spends like the entire film in a hospital. And then Halloween 3 does its own thing. Halloween 4 happens. Michael messes up Jamie so much that, again, she's in a hospital. Halloween 6 does like its own thing. And then we have Rob Zombie's Halloween. Again, Laurie's in the hospital the very next film. And this stuff keeps happening. H2O, it's its own thing. Resurrection, guess what? Laurie's in a mental ward. We can never just get a clean story following an original film because Michael just messes up the final girl so much. But you would think, because I think some of the movies that I've referenced, usually when they start in a hospital or mental ward, like something will happen and we will get out of the hospital, because I think most of the criticism that falls to Halloween 2 is like, man, I really don't want to watch Jamie Lee Curtis lay around in a hospital bed the entire movie. Hopefully they wouldn't make that same mistake again, and what do you know, we're here again. Laurie's in a hospital bed for the entire movie. Hawkins is also there because he got pretty messed up, and we get this dialogue of, they throw away the connection of Michael and Laurie being brother and sister. Like, they even kind of throw it away in 2018, I think, through dialogue. But I really don't know why they got rid of this connection. I actually enjoy the brother and sister kind of story arc. Like, it makes sense. It literally gives us a reason to be worried about the final girl in a Halloween movie. They kind of frame this movie like, oh, the only reason Michael ran into Laurie is because Dr. Sartain kind of took Michael there, And, they just kind of cross paths. And, they're like, oh, sorry, Laurie. Like, Michael's not really coming for you. He's just walking around killing people. He actually wants to go back to his childhood home and stare out a window. Yeah, because that's better than having Michael and Laurie being brother and sister. I don't get why they tried to throw this curveball in and mess with the lore. And, I'm not trying to gatekeep, the older movies. But it just doesn't really make sense to me, like, why they thought this was a better option. But this is what they went with. So we're at this hospital, and one of the patients that broke out, along with Michael, he's kind of on the run. And since the townspeople are, like, on guard, looking for Michael, they eventually cross paths with him, and they mistake him for Michael. And, like, he gets in the hospital, and I guess he has a fascination for untied shoes, I don't know. But they start, like, chasing this guy, and they're, like, trying to kill him. And they have this whole bit that carries on way too long. Man, it feels like it takes forever. Like, I honestly, I hate this part of the film. Like, it is just so goofy. Like, the guy looks like the Penguin from the old Batman movies. Like, he doesn't look like Michael at all. And it's like, come on. Like this dude doesn't even have the same frame as Michael Myers. And I get, like, they probably wouldn't know. They just hear the stories and they don't know what he looks like. But do you really think this is the guy that's terrorizing your town and, walking miles and miles from house to house? Like, this dude would get so tired. And, like you're telling me the cops wouldn't catch him? It's such a bad part of the film. And I'm not even trying to make fun of that actor's physical appearance. I'm nowhere close to perfect. But yeah, it just doesn't make sense why they thought this was a good idea to do. And I mean, like, political messages are fine as long as they don't feel forced. I think this happened around the time that the insurrection happened. And like, that moment sucked. It really did. I remember watching it on the news and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, there's nothing good going on about this. And, I guess, like, if you're in Hollywood and, if you're trying to, like, put stories together to make this film go, maybe someone's like, oh, we should do, like, a mob justice type of message. And you can do that, like, on paper, like, it sounds fine. But they're also trying to continue the stories with Laurie, Allison, and Karen. And then they also want to tie in these different people from Haddonfield, which is, again, a cool idea. But you're shoving way too much into one movie, which causes it to feel messy. And, that's what we get with this part of the film. Like, it just kind of feels from left field. Like, oh, now they're chasing this innocent guy and Karen's trying to help him. And he felt so hopeless that he had to jump from a window. And then he goes splatter on the ground. And it's a really sad moment. Mobs don't always work. And, yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't work. Which, speaking of doesn't work, Sheriff Barker, like, he had one of the coolest appearances in 2018, and even Halloween Kills. And they give this guy nothing to do. While this little mob happens in the hospital, he's like, no, we gotta stop, and they're knocking his cowboy hat off, and he's, like, screaming, he's like, no! And people are, like, stomping on his cowboy hat, and, like, people are throwing women down in the hospital, and the whole scene is chaotic, as it means to, but it's also kind of just chaotic to what we could have had. When you see Sheriff Barker, you're kind of like, oh, this dude's going to be awesome. I can't wait till, like, he squares off with Michael, and we never get that. I don't even know if Barker sees Michael throughout this trilogy. Like, he just doesn't see a lot of action. He doesn't do a whole lot besides look cool, which is disappointing. But we go from this hospital scene, and now, like, the filmmakers are like, oh, yeah, we have Allison, Karen, and Laurie. We got to continue their arc. So then, like, we got to try to, like, push that in. And they're like, oh, yeah, we also have Cameron. We got to bring him in. He's got to do a redemption arc. Which, by the way, Cameron's redemption arc is, like, one of the better parts of the film as far as character development. But I just feel like Allison, Laurie, and Karen, like, they take a back seat. Because we got to see so much of the Haddonfield residents, and, we got to do this mob scene where we're chasing Danny DeVito, and we don't get a whole lot of them. But Cameron has a nice redemption arc, which he gets murdered brutally following that. But it's kind of cool with Cameron. We see his dad, Lonnie, and we hear Lonnie a lot in 2018. Karen's husband, he kind of talks about Lonnie sold him peyote, a drug. And then this movie kind of pulls a reversal. You get his perspective, and he's like, "Oh yeah, your dad sold me peyote. Like we did drugs together." And it's kind of like a like type moment. It's a nice tie back. We see this little family here, but yeah. So, speaking of Lonnie, like we get this final scene where Lonnie takes Cameron and Allison. He only takes them two. He finds out that they got to go to the Michael house, which before this we get a little scene with Big John and Little John. It's kind of goofy. It's a little funny. Again, was it needed? I don't know. Just a goofy sequence, but Michael kills both of them. And, Lonnie's like, all right, we got to go to the Michael house to take care of Michael. And then, he, pulls up there, and then, it's almost like Lonnie's like, oh, crap, I shouldn't have brought the kids. This is a serial killer. And he's like, you two stay in the house. Or, you two stay in the car. I'm going to go in the house. And then the kids were like, what? Like, we want to go in too. And, of course, they follow him. They needed a plot reason to get Allison in the house and to kill Cameron. So, all that goes on. Michael kills Lonnie. Michael kills Cameron in an extremely brutal way. It was pretty cool. But then we get this whole thing. Karen figures out that Allison's at the house, so she goes to the rescue. She takes his mask after she stabs him with the pitchfork. Like, you would think she would try to finish him, maybe stab him in the back of the neck or the head, but no, she's got another plan. She takes the mask and draws him out, and the mob meets Michael there. So we got all the people of Haddonfield. We got Tommy with his old bat, swing away. There's someone with a gun there, like knives, and they all just take turns beating the living crap out of Michael. They're going, they're all hitting him. Finally, Michael goes down and he's just laying there. When we get this little farewell scene where we have Karen and Allison sitting on the steps, they're just kind of talking. And then, Allison eventually, leaves, and Karen's like, oh, you know what I want to do? I want to go inside Michael Myers' house, and I want to look out his window. For whatever reason, that's a draw to certain people. That's a plot reason in this film that's not really explained at all. But it happens. Karen goes to the house, looks out the window. Michael Myers rises up, and he starts taking out all the different residents in Haddonfield. And, the one thing I didn't care for, they do a black background whenever Michael rises up. They play cool music, he starts taking people out. But I guess, they ran out of time to shoot the scene where Michael Myers rises up and starts killing people. And they shot this all, in a factory or studio instead of being outside. A lot of people excuse it. They're like, oh, they ran out of time, so this is what they had to do. It was a creative decision. And it's kind of no, this is kind of your job. If you're going to do a scene outside, if you run out of time, that's on you. You got to figure this out. And to me, I don't like the black background. To me, it feels like a weird dream. It doesn't feel like it's in sequence with the rest of the movie. I just found it really weird. You just see a person walk up one by one. Michael takes them out. And it would have been cool if we saw a scene kind of like the firefighter scene. I enjoyed that a lot. I wished they would have done the same thing whenever Michael rose up at the end. It would have been BA. But we don't get that. We get the black background. He takes them out one by one. And then he goes up behind Karen in the window. And then, she screams. And, he kills her. He starts stabbing her. And at the end of this movie, when I first saw it, I was like, I bet that didn't even happen. I bet that was, Karen's dream. Because, the weird background and everything going on. It just didn't seem right. But no, it happened. Yeah, I just didn't care for how they did that whole thing. But yeah, that's how this movie ends. Michael gets stronger based upon the kills that he gets. So yeah, that's our ending. I mean, overall, I think Halloween Kills is a really fun film. It's really gory. If you don't take it too seriously, it's a fun time. But on the rewatch, I think the idea of watching Halloween Kills is never as fun as actually watching it itself. Because once you hit the hospital scenes, the movie just takes a dive. That middle part, I hate that middle part. And I've always kind of said, like, David Gordon Green, he knows how to shoot a good film. He is very good at filming. His movies are very clean. But I think he's kind of the king of setting up very interesting ideas and premises, but never fully finishes them. We just get lots of cool stuff. And as you're watching these movies, sometimes you go like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if they did this? And they never do it. So, I mean, like this movie is fun. It creates lots of ideas and stuff. And then by the time we hit Halloween Ends, that movie doesn't answer anything about this movie. So, like, it kind of sucks. If Halloween Ends was better, this movie would probably get ranked a lot higher in a lot of people's opinions. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy to me. Because this movie, as much as it is fun, it's also messy. It's very messy. There's a lot of cheese in it, which I'm okay with cheese. But I mean, if you're gonna have cheese to follow up Halloween 18, like that was kind of high up there in terms of quality. So to follow it up with this, like, it's just kind of questionable. I think there was too many writers' arcs going on with this one film. And, like, all the arcs, like, there's kind of different stories going along, and it doesn't ever feel like they fully come together and finish out well. So, yeah. So that's my review of Halloween Kills. So after this movie, we got Halloween Ends. We're going to do a review over that one. And then once we finish that one, I mean, since that's all the Halloween films, we're going to do an episode that's going to rank every single Halloween film. That will be fun. And yeah, if you're still listening, I greatly appreciate you guys listening, tuning in. Feel free to comment what you think of this film. Maybe your opinion differs from mine greatly. Maybe you think the same thing. Let me know in the comments. If you could give this video a like, that gets this video out to different people. It helps the channel out a lot. I mean, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe so you know when the next episode's coming out. Again, if you're listening, I really, really, really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and until next time.